All right. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about my work on how fake manuscripts are sold online and YouTube's role in the illicit antiquities trade, and more specifically, how these two intersect. Before I begin, just a little bit about me. I'm a PhD student in the History and Archaeology department at Macquarie University in Sydney. In my PhD, I'm looking at the production and trade of fakes, specifically these manuscripts over the last 20 years or so. My broader research areas of interest, I guess, fall under the banner of forgery, and within that is the illicit antiquities trade, social media, and media history. And you can see how these various interests intersect in this project, as well as a paper I've got in the works about forgery in the early 20th century Australian press. Otherwise, these are just my contact details. So if you have any questions or feedback, please feel free to reach out to me. So 3 things to touch on first to set the scene a little bit: the ethics of research into the antiquities trade on social media, the manuscripts themselves, and kind of how this all fits into the study of the online trade in illicit antiquities. So in social media research involving sensitive materials or subject matter such as this, approaches to the publication of screenshots, which, as we know, of course, can be important pieces of evidence or information, vary quite considerably. So usually whether screenshots are included or excluded from the published research is determined really by any number of reasons, either by the researcher's judgments or values, ethical guidelines and expectations of their individual discipline or institution, or whether the investigation was conducted by an independent, that is, non-institutional organization. So on the occasions where screenshots are published or shared, some tend to err on the side of caution and publish only a very small sample, all of which of course have been heavily censored or anonymized. Alternatively, some research choose to publish fake screenshots, which have been modeled after the original post. So I've just included an example here, an ethnography of novel drug markets on Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook, for example. These researchers instead created lookalike copies of the actual dealer profiles they encountered on Instagram rather than publish the original profile. So another important ethical concern to think about here is how to disseminate the textual information drawn from these platforms. So in my case, things like comments, video titles, video descriptions, and so on. Leanne Townsend and Claire Wallace from the University of Aberdeen, they collated a pretty useful guide to social media ethics. That was in 2012, so a little bit dated now. But they advised fellow researchers in this space to paraphrase quotes containing sensitive subject matter to instead reflect the themes that emerge from the data as a means to avoid exposing the identity of the platform users from which they're quoting. So these are just 2 of the several ethical considerations I've encountered during this project and continue to navigate. But in brief, I guess this is just another way of me saying that there won't be any screenshots of trading activity on YouTube here, and the comments that I'm going to discuss a little bit later have been translated into English from Arabic and paraphrased a little bit.
Right.
Okay, so just quickly, these are some of the images of the manuscripts that I work with. They've surfaced predominantly in Turkey over the last decade or so, although now since about 2015 to 2016, we've also started to see them appear across a range of mainstream social media platforms in various contexts. As you can see, they're often written in gold ink on tattered brown leather. These supposedly ancient manuscripts are typically decorated with crude imitations of popular Jewish or Christian symbols and iconography. At first glance, their ancient facades are complemented by what appear to be excerpts of the biblical text written in Hebrew, Greek, and sometimes Syriac. Upon closer inspection, however, it becomes clear that in most cases, the text is entirely nonsensical. Letters, words, and phrases have been indiscriminately lumped together to form what is essentially gibberish. Long story short, these manuscripts are often touted in the Turkish media as being hundreds or even thousands of year old Bibles. The manuscripts have, however, been ridiculed and dismissed by some commentators as nothing more than obviously bad fakes of almost comically poor quality. Who would actually buy such a fake is a question that has certainly been asked of these manuscripts before. But that being said, it's the existence and importantly persistence of the trade in these manuscripts that I research, but I guess for the purposes of this presentation, over the course of doing this research, I've come to witness other classes of artifacts being sold on the platform, whether genuine or otherwise. Okay, so it was, what, two years now, in mid-2020, that Facebook introduced a new policy to its community standards that prohibited the exchange, sale, or purchase of all historical artifacts on Facebook and Instagram. According to the platform's existing coordinating harm and promoting crime policy, content promoting the sale of historical artifacts were only removed when it is clear that such items have been looted. In the June update, however, in 2020, the definition of a historical artifact was expanded to include rare items of significant historical, cultural, or scientific value, meaning that selling products of archaeological discoveries, human remains, and mummified body parts, ancient scrolls, and manuscripts was now prohibited. Although the news of the update was generally well received, I would say the effectiveness of the policy and Facebook's commitment to enforcing it were immediately called into question. Emma Al-Azam, co-founder of the Athar project, remarked at the time that Facebook's reliance on user reports and automated systems to identify content that violates the new standard was simply not enough, and that the company should instead invest in teams of experts to identify and remove networks rather than playing whack-a-mole with individual posts. It was also pointed out that Facebook already had a policy banning the sale of human remains on the platform, and that the inclusion of human remains and mummified body parts in the new policy made it clear that the pre-existing policy was insufficiently, if at all, enforced. So despite some initial success, the long-term effectiveness of this policy update still remains to be seen.
Ask us how we know. Yeah.
So in the 17 years since its founding, YouTube has generated a wealth of academic and popular literature on everything from its creators and content to its audience's algorithm and global impact. By 2006, the Google-owned company was already attracting over 13 million daily visitors who are watching more than 100 million videos. Now, with more than 2 billion monthly active users and over 1 billion daily watch hours, YouTube is currently the world's most popular video hosting website and second most popular social media platform after Facebook. Unlike Facebook and Instagram, however, where users, as we know, are required to log into an existing account or create a new one entirely, content uploaded to YouTube is accessible to the site's visitors regardless of whether they have an account or not, of course, with the exception of age-restricted content. In fact, one of the main reasons why YouTube has managed to maintain its dominant position in the industry is precisely because of how accessible it is. So at present, the exchange, sale, and purchase of historical artifacts, to use Facebook's term, is not prohibited on YouTube. In its policy on the sale of illegal or regulated goods and services, users are told that facilitating the sale of illegal or regulated goods by posting links, email addresses, phone numbers, or other means of contacting a seller directly is not allowed. According to the current policy, this applies to videos, video descriptions, comments, live streams, and any other YouTube product or feature, and includes the solicitation of the services and products listed on the screen here. So although users are reminded that this is not an exhaustive list, nowhere on YouTube or its parent company, Google, is it explicitly stated that users are prohibited from using the platform to exchange, purchase, or sell historical artifacts. It's important to note as well here that YouTube also maintains a more detailed set of guidelines that provide internal guidance on the enforcement of these public community guidelines. So according to Google's transparency report, these enforcement guidelines are extensive and dynamic to ensure that the policies apply to changing trends and new patterns of controversial content online. For example, the community guidelines prohibit content that promotes terrorism. If a terrorist group creates a new branch, the Internet Enforcement Guidelines may be updated with information about that specific group, so reviewers have the guidance needed to remove content promoting that group. YouTube, they say, does not always disclose these kind of updates to the public because doing so would make it easier for unscrupulous users to evade detection. So while it is possible that similar updates governing the sale of historical artifacts on YouTube are not publicly disclosed for the same reason, the fact that the platform has no existing public policy or guideline concerning such activity to begin with would, I think, render this possibility somewhat unlikely. Another point to consider, I've just included an image of it on the left here, is that YouTube's reporting tool directly reflects its existing policies and guidelines, which means that we would struggle to report videos that we found to be promoting or facilitating the trafficking of historical artifacts, even if we wanted to. And comments, on the other hand, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, must be flagged in a completely separate reporting tool and can only be reported as unwanted commercial content, hate speech, graphic violence, harassment, and bullying, among other things. So it might be possible to report comments by selecting unwanted commercial content, which I think itself is a bit of a stretch. But YouTube warns its users that this tool is to be used with extreme caution. And if misused, a user may be banned from the platform altogether. So really at present, there are no legal or regulatory barriers preventing the sale of historical artifacts on YouTube. That being said, it's really no secret that these companies only take action against questionable content on activity on their platforms in response to things like huge public outcry, advertiser backlash, or the threat of legislation. So in other words, I would argue that the buying and selling of historical artifacts on YouTube isn't prohibited because it's not yet really perceived as a problem, and we don't know enough about the scope and scale of the trade and how it operates to make our case, which I might add is what my research partly hopes to address. So another key feature of YouTube's that concerns us is the partner program. So one way YouTube and its partners generate revenue is by running ads on or beside a video. In recent years, however, the Google-owned company has come under considerable criticism for allowing advertising on videos that depict or contain illegal and highly objectionable content. To give you a few examples, in 2017, the Times reported that ads for hundreds of large companies, universities, and charities were appearing alongside videos uploaded by supporters of known terrorist groups. The following year, a CNN investigation found that ads for leading American companies such as Adidas, Amazon, Hilton, and Nordstrom were running on videos promoting white nationalist groups, among other things. A 2019 investigation led by the Digital Citizens Alliance in collaboration with the Global Intellectual Property Enforcement Center similarly found ads for a popular American restaurant chain and major auto financing company were running on and alongside videos depicting and promoting the use of illegal appearance and performance enhancing drugs. So in much the same way, in my research, I've encountered ads for a host of high-profile companies running on and alongside videos uploaded by users explicitly or indirectly facilitating the trade, I would argue, in historical artifacts, whether genuine or otherwise. To give you an example, during my master's research, I encountered a completely monetized and verified, importantly, Morocco-based channel who at the time had accumulated nearly 200,000 subscribers and nearly 30 million channel views. In this user's about page, they had included a link to their second YouTube channel, Instagram account, Facebook page, and a link to a private Facebook Antiquities trading group with, at the time, nearly 15,000 members. Although since then, the channel has been terminated. To give you another example, which is still active on the platform, I observed ads for 3 different companies running on and alongside a video uploaded in 2018, in which quote unquote old Jewish manuscripts were being advertised by its uploader as for sale. So like the previous example at the time, this uploader had also included a link to a Morocco-based Facebook group dedicated to the exchange, sale, and evaluation of antiquities and other things, with nearly 900 members. Now, however, the description has been changed to include only their contact number. So to monetize a video with ads, YouTube users can apply to join the partner program upon reaching 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 public watch hours within the last 12 months. So to be eligible, a user must also ensure that the content of their videos adhere to the platform's community guidelines and advertiser-friendly content guidelines. In other words, a user's content must not contain, among other things, inappropriate language, violence, harmful or dangerous acts, recreational drugs, and so on. So although videos can sometimes run ads if the channels associated with them are not monetized, a member of the partner program can typically be identified by the presence of ads on or alongside their videos. So this is just a very brief overview of the issue of monetization of YouTube, but I think it highlights some of the pitfalls of the platform's guidelines and content moderation tools, which essentially enable both YouTube and users, generally with over 1,000 subscribers, to generate revenue from content that promotes or facilitates the sale of historical artifacts. So how are these manuscripts bought and sold on YouTube? What kinds of information do their sellers reveal about themselves, and why is this important? I wanted to draw your attention to a video that features some of these so-called Jewish books that I showed you a bit earlier. So video one is a video that was uploaded to YouTube 10 years ago now, and it still exists on the platform, which is quite amazing, I think. And it features 3 small metal codices. And if you've heard of the Jordanian lead codices, you'll know what I'm talking about because that's what they look like. So what this video shares with others like it on YouTube is that its comment section has been totally overrun by buyers and sellers of these Jewish books. The majority of users who commented on this video shared at least some form of information about themselves, ranging from their nationality and current location to their phone number and preferred means of direct communication, such as WhatsApp or Viber. In some cases, the users who commented on this video would also disclose varying degrees of information about the perceived age, type, and material of the books they have on offer. So this is a small sample of some of the comments that have been left under the video since it was uploaded, some as early as last year and this year. So this sample, I would say, is unusual in the sense that the sellers have provided more information than what would typically be shared. Here, they've disclosed what I would consider to be quite detailed information about themselves and the manuscripts, from their names, phone numbers, geographic location, to the perceived age, type, material, language, and even function of the manuscripts in question. This sample here represents the most standard formula of comments, I guess you could say, left by those in this particular community, if you could put it that way. So they provide comparatively little information about the books and themselves, indicating only briefly what they want or what they have, and how they can be contacted off-site, which is usually WhatsApp. So one of the many noteworthy things about this particular video is what I think it tells us about how the trade operates on YouTube in particular. And what I mean by that is that the overwhelming majority of users who commented on this video were completely uninterested in the content of the original video. The majority of users instead used the video's comment section as a means to advertise these Jewish books, the Jewish books in their possession, or to seek out their own from other sellers. So despite being uploaded a decade ago, this video has continued to attract a steady stream of comments from sellers of these old Jewish books, regardless of whether the books in the original video were ever sold or even available for sale to begin with. I think it's quite clear by the comment section and the contents of it that this video has become a venue of sorts for the exchange, sale, and purchase of such objects in which like-minded sellers solicit interest by claiming to possess similar items to those shown in the video. It's my contention here that inadequate moderation and a lack of policy intervention has, among other reasons, of course, allowed niche dealer communities such as these to thrive and its participants to conduct business in plain sight and seemingly without fear of consequence. And they were just my observations from before. But this leads me to conclude by posing a number of questions. So the approach I take in my research on YouTube is qualitative in the sense that I'm primarily interested in the language used to advertise these manuscripts. So how these fakes are presented as genuine by the users, how the members of this particular pocket of the trade operate and interact with each other. At the same time, adopting such an approach means that it's admittedly difficult to get a sense of how the trade on YouTube operates more broadly. So is it even possible to make an estimate on this platform of the trading activity? I think it's certain that YouTube does in its own way promote and facilitate the trade in antiquities, but what is less certain at the moment is just how deep the problem runs. And it's ultimately this uncertainty that my research, and I hope future research from other people, can address. Thank you.